Anand brother. Very good evening and good morning to all of you. I have a great pleasure in welcoming all of you for the live webinar on regulatory affairs as a career path. For this webinar, which is organized by the Department of Pharmacology, JSS College of Pharmacy, Ooty, we have a renowned speaker, Mr. Srinivas Gurram, Vice President and Head, Regulatory Affairs and Quality Assurance, Zydus Pharmaceuticals, USA. On behalf of the institution and on behalf of the department, I would like to extend a warm welcome to you, sir. I welcome you for this webinar. So with this welcome, I request my colleague, Dr. R. Vadivelan, Professor of the Department, to give a brief bio sketch of the renowned speaker, Mr. Srinivas Gurram. Dr. Vadivelan.
Thank you, Dr. Praveen. Today, here with us, our Honorable Speaker, Mr. Srinivas Gurram. Currently, he is working as Vice President and Head of Regulatory Affairs, Zydus Pharmaceuticals, USA, Pennington, New Jersey. To come up with his education, he has completed his Bachelor of Pharmacy at Gulbarga University, India, and Master of Pharmacy at JSS College of Pharmacy, Ooty, our proud alumni, and at Dr. MGR Medical University, India. And to his honors, he has received the Best Outgoing Student Award from Sri Jagadguru Shivratri Desikendra Mahaswami Yogaluru Gold Medal in NPharm for scoring highest marks among all branches of specialization in 91 to 93, and also received CL Baid Mehta Endowment Gold Medal Award from Dr. MGR Medical University, Chennai in M-Pharmacy as a University Top Ranker, and also received Best Thesis Performer Award from IPA local branch of Coimbatore for his thesis entitled Targeted Drug Delivery Systems Formulation and Evaluation of Hydrophilic Albumin Microspheres of Diclofenac Sodium. So coming to his previous experience, he has worked in various areas as head. To say some few, as a head of Regulatory Affairs Department to Aurobindo Pharma, Hyderabad in 2002 to 2006, and as a manager in Regulatory Affairs Ranbaxy Laboratories, Devas, India in 2001 to 2002, and also as Deputy Manager QC and QA, and Assistant Manager in QC and QA, and also Executive Production from year 1996 to 2000. To say some of his exposure to quality audits in US FDA, Central Audit Coordinator 23 successful inspection, MHRA UK, and Simplane Beacon Pharmaceuticals, Park Davis, Bayer India, Novartis. So like that, I have to take more time to read his bio sketch. So with this short bio sketch, I would like to call upon our honorable speaker to give his live webinar on regulatory affairs as career path. Please welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. So good evening, everyone. I know it is definitely 5 o'clock. Dragging everyone to listen to something like a classroom is not so easy, but I will try to make it really worth you guys are hanging out there. So let me just start with a little vertical travel on the memory lane because the opportunity that I got from is from the same college where I graduated from. So it really gives me an immense pleasure in talking to everyone this evening. And I'm really happy to stand in front of you this morning in the US time as well. So I am not sure how much time I have to run this, but I will try to keep it simple and make it more understandable. And my goal this morning, and also to agree to this particular topic here, is to make or create some kind of awareness to the budding pharmacists who are really looking with some confused paradigm in selecting their own career paths. But as a professional traveled myself into this era, or the sustaining the regulatory affairs as a core function in the industry, I was kind of thinking I should definitely go back to my mother country and contribute something and make my people to realize what exactly this regulatory affairs today stands in the core functionality or servicing organization within the pharmaceutical industry in there. I know definitely most of the folks I'm talking to this evening are pharmacist population. I'm not sure, but I will try to make it as a biphasic process. People who are really looking at industry as their career path, and within industry, what exactly they are trying to move upon and how they want to see this particular regulatory affairs at the core function. But definitely doesn't mean I try to give some apprehension on how industry operates as well, because that is definitely going to benefit or set up kind of baseline for all my pharmacists listening to me today. Will have some baseline of understanding in terms of even moving on to regulatory affairs or formulation development or analytical development or pharmacovigilance, or there are a lot of core functionalities out there. So let me try to understand this as a biphasic process. Who are all definitely looking to join or make their career within industry, definitely that is one of the best decisions you are trying to make today. Trust me when I say this, after traveling this long, it will definitely not going to disappoint you. Because of the simple reason, as we are experiencing the pandemics, the way world is being challenged by this kind of disease pandemics, it is a continual challenge to a pharmacist to keep himself on his toes, to come out with a lot of promising therapies and try to make sure that we are offering a real great promising therapy to the people suffering out of this element. So if I consider that as a holy thing that we are trying to deliver as a pharmacist, working for an industry where you are really trying to formulate the difficult to manufacture and with very, very great cohesive way of working functionality as dosage forms and bringing them to the marketplace and making them to pass critical clinical evaluations that are required by the regulatory agencies. And so we are really proud in doing all this and trying to get these dosages out. So if I consider that as a holy thing that you guys are trying to do or selecting as a path, let us just try to understand. I know I try to keep it max by 30 minutes to 45 minutes the max. So let me not waste any more. Let us just try to understand how this, I know you just try to visualize industry like it goes when you are a student, when you are thinking how industry really operates. You think from the point of view which you are really focused on to. Say, for example, you are doing your master's program in pharmacy right now. So which branch are you working, or which chapters are you are really going through right now, and which kind of experimentation you are to, and which is your specialization. That really creates a kind of tunnel view when you try to visualize what happens in the industry. So like a pharmaceutics as a specialization candidate always thinks about big manufacturing machinery that produces lakhs and lakhs of tablets, capsules, and whatnot, injections or whatever. So the same way, you being a pharmaceutical chemistry specialization personnel, you always think about busy in identifying so chemical bands just hanging or lingering around the chemical structures to just maneuvering them or bringing into a new chemical entities and finally making them or converting them into a promising pharmaceutical dosage form targeting against a specific disease. So your view is tunnelized there. But I just want to give you, that is not the entire thing, but you try to better develop a bird's eye view on industry if you are really trying to make a career path. The reason I'm trying to say, I always get hundreds and thousands of questions from students around the country. Like, my specialization in master's program is pharmaceutical chemistry. So do you think I can be a formulation scientist? Do you think I can be a manufacturing chemist? Do you think I can be an analytical chemist? Do you think I can be an effective regulatory affairs professional? Or do you think I should pursue for pharmacovigilance or post-marketing surveillance kind of thing? So a lot of questions. So just to try to understand, whatever your specialization is, MPharm, just forget about it. That is a specialization required for you to get your degree in your hands. I am not denying the fact that you are really getting some theoretical specialization out of that, and that really helps moving forward, but definitely don't develop that so-called tunnel view. It's not going to stop, or it's not the end of the world per se. So I'm just trying to clear out the clouds in there. Whatever the specialization you are into, there is no bar. Whichever the area you are trying to select in the industry is not going to defeat your purpose of selecting it. Okay, so be happy. But my specific request all the time to the budding pharmacists who are visualizing this long-term goal in making it as a reality moving forward, try to understand the entire dynamics. So the reason I am specifically saying this is, moving forward, I am going to make you guys realize why regulatory affairs is supposed to be this way, and why a person trying to pursue is supposed to be this way, or supposed to hit onto this go on button the way it is supposed to be. So that makes really a big difference in understanding. Okay. So given this, I will just try to give you a snapshot of how a product life cycle per se works in industry and how industry looks like. Okay. You rightly understand there is a start of drivers always who takes this as identifying any specific product or identifying any, I am specifically talking about something which is already being marketed. So let me say that drug is already a brand company or innovator company is already manufacturing and it is already marketing. Okay. So let us take that as an example. So it makes our life easy to understand the entire rest of the life cycle. But if I try to take new chemical entity, that takes you maximum time in understanding. By the time we come here, I may end up losing my time. So let us take the example of a best brand product which is already being marketed. Okay. So how that happens in any typical pharmaceutical industry, you will have a product portfolio teams or marketing strategy departments. Okay. This is the department, or these folks are responsible identifying any product which is having some marketable sense that makes sense to the company in order for us to develop it as a generic formulation or a branded formulation, whatever it is. And it should make some economical sense for the company, right? So it is, at the end, it is definitely a business. We should definitely balance it. So they have to identify that product and read on what could be the potential sale that existing brand company is doing, and what is the potential that we as a generic company making an entry, how much market share are we going to do? So they do all this strategic study on the molecule, and they identify everything in terms of what kind of dosage from brand company is marketing right now, whether it is available in different varieties of strengths, and what are the kind of packages that brand company is offering. So there is a product life cycle sheet they develop and send it to a property rights or patent rights department, where a patent read is done on that identified product, whether it makes any economic sense to the company to challenge the existing patents, or still we can make some profit on the product. And in order for us to make it as a viable option as a product, how big will be the patent battle or the legal battle. So they do that read, and as a package, they hand it over to corporate. So when I say corporate is amalgamation of mix of people who constitutes this particular core of functionality in terms of sales, marketing, and broadcasting. So they try to give this package to our research and development, where specifically formulation development and analytical development are main entities. In parallel, of course, we should look at the clinical options of the product as well. So we have clinical research, and it could be, if it is a generic product, we don't need to conduct any clinical trials, but per se bioequivalence. We will come to that portion little afterwards, okay? So once formulation development, analytical development, and clinical research folks, they start putting together like a product life cycle, like they try to develop by looking at brand product, they do reverse engineering, and they try to understand how best we can make our equivalent product in terms of matching dissolution, in terms of matching bioequivalence, and they develop that product. So once they develop that product, they try to maneuvering continuously with corporate amalgamated entity to make sure that is perfectly developed like a package, that it is ready to go ahead on our manufacturing shop floor. So that is the time they get it to the manufacturing shop floor in terms of a technology transfer. Generally, we call it as a pilot level to pivotal level, okay? So they try to see the feasibility of manufacturing the product on shop floor in a big scale or a commercial scale, and try to see still the dissolution requirements and confidence level on passing bioequivalence are still met by our formulation development folks. So in parallel, clinical folks are developing bioequivalency rationale, and analytical development is developing and working on all analytical methods around developing all specifications and comparing it with, if it is already there is a United States pharmacopoeial monograph, compare with it and just make sure your product is meeting all those specifications, and also try to make sure if your product is even more robust than USP specification, try to define them. And all this becomes like a manufacturing package. So at this point of time, for your understanding purpose, yes, definitely I'm saying at this point of time, but definitely regulatory affairs is a core functionality today in the industry. They are not just involved at this particular phase of handling things, but they are involved right from product flow to corporate to manufacturing. Their involvement is everywhere. I'm not sure how old that you really heard about regulatory affairs function, but I don't hesitate saying it today. I am sailing from an era where we used to, when I joined even regulatory affairs, people were kind of, I don't want to use that term, but people used to say it's kind of a courier postman job, kind of understanding the reason behind whatever packages, whatever technical packages, whatever is required, we used to get from this research and development folks as big technical documents and packages. And we are just asked to put all those as per the requirements of regulatory agency in a specific format or specific dossier, they used to call those days, and sending it to them. So that's where definitely I don't hesitate, or I don't say people were saying it like people were doing a courier job. Oh, definitely. At one point of time, yes, people were doing real courier job. I also was a perfect courier boy once upon a time. But slowly, it was definitely not giving me satisfaction of appetite. Let me put that way. This is not the way supposed to be in regulatory affairs, because whatever you are getting, you are just putting it as a package and passing on to regulatory agency is not something I am looking for as an exciting student when I came out of my academics. So I started thinking myself, what best can be done here? And luckily, God bless and touch wood, industry started taking a big evolution those days. At that point of juncture, I still remember, I'm talking maybe 95, 96 or max by 1997 era, where all companies started looking at so-called regulated markets, and they started making their applications to these regulatory agencies. So that's a big blessing in the country, where regulatory affairs started being challenged. Why I am saying it is being challenged? Just identify the slide. The reason I am letting this slide to appear in front of you for more time. Did you all identify regulatory is not just isolated, but it is almost in the last stage within your organization? And it is directly, arrow marks are displaying my coordination to US FDA or any regulatory agency. Because I am more into US, I am illustrating it as FDA. But if you identify this, you will realize, you look at any other functionality within the slide that you are seeing right now, any functionality department, you see corporate, R&D, manufacturing. Even within R&D, I was defining 3-4 stakeholder technical departments, even technology transfer, manufacturing, quality control, quality assurance. They are all within internal cohesive, where they have an opportunity of having a side by internal person who can look at the quality of job you did. But how about regulatory affairs here? Just look at the guy who is standing immediately besides regulatory affairs is the regulatory agency. So what that mean to me, whatever output or whatever package that I'm passing through, the next person to see my output is regulatory agency. I don't have the fancy of any internal stakeholder looking at the quality of my output and saying that is acceptable or not acceptable, whatever. But it is only regulatory agency. So just by taking package from someone and handing it over to regulatory agency was not at all a viable option those days, because regulatory agencies started chasing out the companies with a lot of big so-called deficiencies, that this is not the way we expect, this is not the way your developmental work is supposed to be done, whatnot. Just try to understand who is getting all those slammings to face as a face of the company. Yes, regulatory affairs. So all communication that was, see, communicative representative barrier. So everything was coming to regulatory affairs. Anything was going out was from regulatory affairs. So how you want to represent your face to the regulatory agency, and also at the same time, it is like a left turn and right turn. See, I used to say, you are on left turn mode or right turn mode. Right turn mode is always facing regulatory agency. Left turn mode is talking to your internal folks, looking at you, where is my approval? Where is the quality of submissions that I have given you? What's happening to my approval? What is happening to my application? So a lot of pressure building, and lot of pressure building from these folks in terms of big deficiencies out there. So what are we achieving finally? So I lost my track. No, this is not the way. But then what should be done? I realized regulatory affairs, let me rephrase it, okay? An effective regulatory affairs professional, in order for him to be a successful regulatory affairs professional, I think today I am, so I have the privilege of saying this, should have not only a theoretical understanding, but practical understanding also of entire manufacturability and life cycle of the product. Then only I am going to be an effective regulatory affairs professional, in order for evaluating the technicalities that I am getting from my people and handing it over to regulatory agency. So my level of understanding should be equal to all the stakeholders, and at the same time in par with the regulatory agency. So that is where I realized regulatory affairs professional should not simply knows only manufacturing portion, knows only quality control portion, knows only quality assurance portion, or formulation development, or analytical development, or bioequivalence. He should be mastering all these. I'm not saying he is the SME or subject matter expert on everything, but his understanding level should be definite in order for him to succeed as a regulatory affairs professional. So I am just trying to put more time on here because most of the people try to understand this. And my immediate question should come from any smart pharmacist sitting out there, because it is not an open session, but I can see a lot of people. But how to achieve this? Once you are completing your academia and joining industry, then where do you have a room to develop all these skills? Definitely, that is the valid point, and that is the real challenge that regulatory affairs professional is having. Like, by the time you become an effective regulatory affairs professional, you definitely cross 35 or 37 or 40 years of your age life cycle in the industry. So it's not going to make you really successful. But how to achieve this? I heard a lot of masters in pharmaceutical programs started offering regulatory affairs quality assurance as a functionality. That has been a best thing I can tell you. At least we never had fancy of looking at theoretical aspects of regulatory affairs when we were doing our master's. So definitely that is an added advantage, but still, how are we going to have this so-called shop floor realization, shop floor understanding of product cycle, life cycle management in order for me to become an effective regulatory affairs professional? So that was the real challenge. So somehow, definitely, those days itself, thanks to the God, I developed myself a bird view, so-called bird view. When I entered into the industry, even entering itself was not so easy. You know, even you are understanding, you are facing the same thing right now, but things will settle definitely. No worries at all. But I started my career with manufacturing. And after working for manufacturing for some time, see, I am not saying this is going to be a fancy flower show or a fancy green field for everyone to pursue, but how it has happened and how I ended up in regulatory affairs. I'm just trying to give my perspective, but I don't expect everyone to just duplicate it or master it the same way I did, because that's not possible practically, because that's how I got real blessings from the God, okay? Manufacturing, started working on quality control, moved to quality assurance, moved to validation, and from again quality assurance. And I started even looking parallelly the product life cycle management in terms of formulation development, analytical development. Even I myself worked on all sophisticated analytical instruments, all manufacturing equipment or machinery on shop floor. And at the end, with the real, very rich quality experience, quality assurance experience per se, I entered into regulatory affairs. So I am talking early 2000s. That is the time I entered regulatory affairs with all these background from shop floor realization. So that's where it made me to sail through this real challenging world of regulatory affairs. So what are the advantages? Even today, I am really proud of my own regulatory team in the Zydus as an organization right now, because they all believe what I say and they all sail through the same way. So they are very effective and they are very smart folks out there. So definitely I'm really happy. But the way today, even as a package, see, generally all of you must be knowing we call it as abbreviated new drug applications or ANDAs for US FDA submission. As an entire package, even people think twice before they put it on my table even today, because of my rich shop floor experience God blessed me with. I can look at the dossier in the maximum possible in par view as a US FDA reviewer today and judge on the quality of my own application before it leaves to the FT. It's not only me. I try to make each team member of my department today to that level, and they are up to the level. And happily, I'm not saying I'm saying this proudly, but happily I'm telling you, consecutively for the past 3 years, we have been like JDS as an organization are the highest ANDA approval grabber in the world. So this is really happened out of realization. That's what I'm just more even emphasizing on the function of regulatory affairs. Before anybody is thinking of making it as a career, I expect you to be a package of pretty much everything. How you want to achieve it, how you want to see it, you need to explore. Because it is not possible today, the way industry is crunched, I can't expect everybody is getting the option of joining into one department, moving into another, moving into another, moving into another, and joining regulatory. So this is not an ideal defined path. But even by working one specialized form, I know a lot of folks in my own company and in my peer companies, people, even if he is working in formulation development, analytical development, folks are spending extra hours to spend their time in making their skill set up, even in terms of quality control, even in terms of quality assurance, even in terms of manufacturing. People are trying to make their skill set up and trying to pursue regulatory affairs. Trust me when I say this, I get a lot of internal requests, even from peer companies. I finished this many years of my industry experience in so-called department, but I did my skill set up in terms of rest of everything. We know the model you operate. So we want to be package of pretty much everything, and we want to move to regulatory affairs. I get a lot of these requests actually. And one more thing, this is all theoretical again. What I'm trying to tell you is, or I try to explain you till now, still I consider it is theoretical, because I can see the way academics are growing in the country or have been grown in the country. Industry is never grown in terms of size in par with accommodating the number of pharmacists coming out. So that is still a problem in the country. I see it. So given that it has a big challenge, how are we going to have this, having understanding of each department and finally entering into a fancy department like regulatory affairs and start flourishing? Still not a possibility. I can clearly understand, but nothing is impossible as well. Everything is possible, but we need to find out our own ways. When I was I am not using any name of the companies, but one of the companies when I employed as their head of regulatory affairs, and the company was very enthusiastic, proactive in making their entry into the US market those days, and 0 submissions, and the responsibility was given to me and 3-4 hardcore technical people who are placed into bioequivalence, formulation development, analytical development. And we were given the challenge of making their ANDA portfolio or entry into the US market. So those challenging times, I was trying to place people from industry or even from academia per se with a lot of at least theoretical understanding of maximum coverage. But somehow I thought it was too greedy in my own thinking, and it's not possible. And it's not fair also to rub on head of an individual to be mastering all areas and start working for me in regulatory. So I am going to give you a little understanding even on the path I selected at that point of time, because I am not able to grab people who are capable of handling pretty much everything. But still we are effective today, and still we are successful today. But before entering into that, I just want to quickly show you how this life cycle management. I am not going to spend much time on each slide from this point onwards. because I consider them as theoretical. So they are very self-explanatory. I will just try to help you understand the snapshot of the slide, but definitely not spending this much time. But the reason I spent maximum time, this is one of the favorite slides of my life. This slide is going to define, and even I'm trying to tell you this slide, I prepared after I was successful, but it was always there in my imagination, virtual world. And this particular slide really made me to think, and this is a game changer in my life. So critically look at this. It means a lot. It is having a big meaning in order for a person to enter into regulatory affairs and pursue your career, okay? So I am exiting from this slide because I am already addicted to this slide, so I don't want to spend any more time. So I may be talking more in terms of US as my model to facilitate this talk, but this is how the model pretty much exists anywhere globally. Let it be any kind of regulatory agency, this is pretty much the model. Maybe the terminologies and the way they term them could be changing. Otherwise, this is how it looks like. All of you know the initial new chemical entity, if any basic research identifies as a product or a molecule which is targeted to the treatment of a specific element, we need to start it like an investigational new drug. So ballpark time, I just try to put the discovery research is 10 to 14 years. I think still people are trying to bring it down with sophisticated analytical techniques or manufacturing techniques or formulation development techniques. They are trying to cut short, but still I take pretty much this as an average. So there are a lot of clinical studies involved, and we have to convince regulatory agency in terms of clinical studies before they understand the safety portion and the clinical promising therapy portion and the safety portion of the treatment that we are proposing. By the time we conduct our phase 3 clinical study, they ask you to file it like a new drug application. So I just try to say the phase 1 generally, they try to target safety profile and the designing of the dosage. And phase 2, they try to do drug effectiveness. Phase 3 is efficacy and safety mainly. And on phase 4, most of the times agency may be additionally asking for phase 4. Otherwise, with phase 3, a lot of NDAs will take off for their approval, okay? So I just don't want to spend more time on new drug era of making submissions or making it like a possible filing and approval process. But I try to give more emphasis because I am a specific hardcore generic regulatory affairs professional. So let me talk more on to generics. Otherwise, there is not much difference between a generic product and a brand product. I will just try to show you that snapshot as well. If anyone today asks me, what is the major difference between a new drug and an abbreviated new drug? All the difference it makes is the clinical study you do there, and I do a bioequivalency study here. That's it. All chemistry, manufacturing controls, labeling, everything is pretty much same. All I don't do is clinical, because you already did clinical. You abbreviated that clinical portion for me, so I am filing it as an abbreviated new drug application. Otherwise, it is a new drug application. That is the only difference. So let us just quickly browse through how this abbreviated new drug application looks like and what governs. See, most of you must have heard, who are having in part of in your curriculum, all of you must be knowing Hatch-Waxman amendments they made as Food and Drugs and Cosmetics Act, mainly to introduce generics in the US market space. And there are a lot of amendments out there. I don't want to spend much time. See, yeah, this is the difference I am talking about. The major difference between new drug application and abbreviated new drug application. So it is only if you look at that is the clinical studies portion, or maybe an full-blown toxicological studies. Otherwise, once efficacy, bioavailability, and safety are established by new drug applicant, I can use always those reference material into my abbreviated new drug application package, and I can file it as an ANDA. And in extra, what I try to do is a bioequivalent. So let me give small stress here. So all of you must be aware, you must have heard bioequivalency, because a lot of clinical research organizations came in the country today, even in India. So you must be hearing a lot about this. So when you are filing a generic drug product, agency's expectation is to show in a healthy volunteers, your product when administered at the same conditions like branded new drug product, it has to be equivalent in terms of a statistical pharmacokinetic model. See, for example, like AUC and 90% confidence interval, that kind of statistical parameters, you need to establish your product is equivalent in vivo to the brand product is bioequivalence. So don't get confused or don't think that it's a big rocket science, okay? So that is a simple understanding of bioequivalence. And these are the requirements. In order for me to facilitate it like an abbreviated new drug application in regulatory, it should be the same active ingredient, same route of administration, it should be same dosage form, same strength, and same conditions of use my brand product is aiming for. So in US terminology, they call it as reference listed drug, RLD, in the Orange Book. And I also should look out patent and exclusivity scenario whenever I am trying to file my abbreviated new drug application in regulatory era. So these are different patent certifications and requirements we need to file, okay? And in order for us to understand where we get all this information is called as an Orange Book or approved drug products with therapeutic equivalence evaluation, or the Orange Book is the terminology in USFDA. So I'm just trying to give snapshot of understanding on the flow of the product life cycle in terms of making it as an abbreviated new drug application. So literature search and active, and we need to active pharmaceutical ingredient evaluation, and followed by analytical testing of your main active ingredient, and parallelly testing your innovator's product, and also testing your physical characterization properties, and try to make sure it is matching your in vitro dissolution condition. So identifying a lot of inactive ingredients or excipients, and also identifying container closure system in relates to brand product. And finally, getting into the manufacturing process by looking at the brand product, you try to formulate exactly the similar way like brand product in order for you to comfortably passing your in vitro dissolution and bioequivalence, of course. And then you go for commercialization of the product or to the commercial scale before even making your application with the regulatory agency. So you source API and you do all your optimizations, analytical method validations, and all in vitro dissolution correlations and qualification on your commercial scale exhibit batch. And parallelly, you put it on stability study, and you also give it to bioequivalence study. And once the data comes out with 6 months stability data on 3 batches, you start compiling it like an application ANDA, where regulatory affairs actively involves and put together as a package. All of you must have heard FDA accepts into CTD format, and then FDA parallelly plans even for a pre-approval inspection of the facility where you have taken your exhibit batch and try to make your application. And based on successful outcome of all this, you will be getting an application approval. And once it is approved, then we enter into post-approval compliance era, which we are required to give a lot of annual reports with all major chemistry or chemical process changes that we implemented on the approved product, etc., etc. And if you want to propose any changes, there are very governed guidances out there, and post-approval inspections also continuous process by the agency, so on and so forth. So this is a simple understanding. And now again, I am coming back to my own challenge, where I was thinking it is practically not possible for me to build a regulatory affairs team with all kind of SMEs put together, making the submission process. I realized it is impossible. So that's where this is what is a customized system. Yeah, it is my own brainchild. So I proposed myself, I should change my way of setting up regulatory affairs. So that's where I call it as a CARE, which is creatively availing the review enterprise process. What is this stands for? In what way did I start making a difference in regulatory affairs set up in the country? So I think it was me first time I broken down into different segments as an application. Say chemistry manufacturing controls, labeling, bioequivalence, and electronic common technical document compilation, and quality assurance team within regulatory affairs team to check the final quality of submission once compiled by all these segments. That is where I am calling it as creatively availing review enterprise. So what did I do? So I started going back to the industry and I started asking people with the experience. Say, for example, a guy is having a rich manufacturing experience. Do you want to join regulatory affairs? Come in. Go to a person who is having rich quality control experience. Are you interested to join regulatory affairs? Come on in. Go to another person who is having formulation development experience, analytical development experience. Even I was going to the people who are clinicians. Even I remember one of my classmates in BPharm who was a certified pharmacist in Canada, and he came back to India setting up his own dispensing pharmacy in high standard. So he set up that, and I gone back to this guy, and suddenly out of nowhere I asked him, are you interested to join regulatory? So he had shock of his life ultimately, but he said yes because he trusts me. But what am I achieving out of all these placements? So I realized soon, get independent SMEs from shop floor, constitute them as my technical review teams, and get, based on his technical skill or shop floor excellence, get those technical documents reviewed by them. So who else can do a better review than he himself was generating those documents once upon a time? So now you just correlate, why did I go to a clinical pharmacist? Because I want him to lead my labeling section. I want to have him as my labeling generating person. So that is where he started adding value. So likewise, people who did their specialization in pharmacology and who are definitely having some understanding of clinical studies, who are having some understanding of bioequivalency. So I started asking them to review my bioequivalency protocols and reports. Likewise, with rich quality control experience, review my analytical documentation. So with analytical development, review my analytical method validation. So same way, validation people, quality assurance people. So that is where we constituted a team and we started really seeing success. Trust me, once this so-called model today I'm very happily can represent to anyone. The way when we started taking people with this diversified skill and constituting them in regulatory affairs, and I always used to spend my entire time on training entire people on the bird view of the quality of the application. Finally, how each segment has to be connected, interconnected, intra-connected. And finally, we are making it as a fantastic quality application and giving it to the hands of the regulatory agency with a lot of comfort, at least happily give it to them. Whatever deficiencies comes back, we always try to just minimize number of deficiencies that are coming out from the agents. That is the goal. That is where the effectiveness of regulatory affairs function started really flying up. So my summary here, definitely, I don't want to take any more time from here now. If anyone is looking at industry, fantastic decision. You made a right decision, and I really welcome it personally. And the second level, if you want to make your career into regulatory affairs, this is how you develop your bird's eye view. Understand. It's not just going to the regulation or the requirement of the regulatory agency, the style of package that you want to put together, but you try to understand each component of application. You have your own hands-on, and you have authoritative review process or the technical skill or the knowledge. You are constituting into the team, and you are becoming part of the team rather, and making it is a quality submission. That is where the most challenging quality standards of regulatory agencies will become very, very far in the own understanding paradigm. That is where we really see this. Thank you very much. I think I am holding, I don't know if I really took a lot of your time, but I tried to keep it simple, I think. So thank you very much for spending a lot of your time this evening and listening to me. And I know JSH used to be very generous in serving masala dosas on Sunday, but my friends at my own college department this evening are very generous, even giving me time. I didn't see Dr. Dhanpal, but convey my regards to him. Also Dr. Suresh, who has been my continuous mentor. So folks, anytime if you have any questions, I can see a lot of questions, but I don't know how as a moderator wants to deal with these questions this morning, but feel free to reach out to me if you have any further questions, and if I am really can help you understand the process. Thank you very much. Take care and stay safe during this unexpected pandemic, okay?
Thank you, Srinivas, for a nice presentation. I think it will be useful for the budding pharmacy people if they wanted to choose the regulatory affairs as their career. So we have some questions that has been raised by the participants. I think Srinivas also can give that. So you can select any of the questions and you can give the explanation so that the participants can able to know about it.
Yeah, this is a big question by one of our friends. I'm currently pursuing B Pharmacy and I'm in second year, fourth semester. Can you please guide me about what to write in my CV or resume to get selected for internships related to regulatory affairs and allied fields like clinical research, pharmacovigilance, and medical writing or coding? Yeah, definitely. See, I am not a very resume writing expert, or because I hardly get necessity even writing my own resume because I don't change companies so frequently. But definitely this is a real practical problem. So my suggestion to you is try to just short it down to which area really you want to pursue your internship, and try to give more emphasis on that, what definitely you learned out of your bachelor's in pharmacy program you learned, and try to give more emphasis there. Why you are really interested, and if at all that company has to offer you internship in that specific core area, why they have to choose you or why they have to select you. I think this is the skill of developing any resume, I believe. And the next question I have here, how different regulatory affairs work when it comes to biological entity market instead of small molecule market? See, biologics is a definitely promising area right now because the target population and the promising therapy segment is really more effective and efficient in terms of biologics, because in terms of injectables and vaccines, you can just give big answer to the wider affected patient population. Otherwise, the prospects within regulatory affairs is definitely splashing out, and they are fantastic out there. And it is definitely promising right now, coming area. Trust me, even I am now learning biologics of area right now, because we have a couple of applications filed with the agency. Yeah, so I think same friend is asking, he didn't allow anybody to type in. Good, Sharma, you are great. So what skills I have to develop to get selected for regulatory affairs jobs or internships? So as I rightly said, don't keep it as a bar. Anything that you want to pursue in industry is definitely suitable to regulatory affairs. But all what you have to do in extra is try to understand at least the theoretical perspective of rest every area. So same friend is asking me, do JDS Cadila offers internships for BPharm students in India? Then what are the requirements for this? So I am not exactly sure how our internship program in India works, but still you can reach out on our website and just look around and try to apply. Yeah, you can use my reference as well and see how it goes, okay? And students after their masters in regulatory affairs immediately looking for placement in industry with regulated market. Is it a right choice? Or initially join in the small companies is good for their learning? Advisors, Ganesh. See, Ganesh, my understanding here is more of deciding ourselves in order for us to pursue a job. Instead of that, wherever you get, making your entry is more important, because you need to build up your career, and starting the clock of your job is more important. Trust me, I joined a company which is exclusively making just liquid injectables and isolated, and even the facility was so tiny, so small, even it was about 250, 270 kilometers away from Hyderabad, okay? So it is nothing is going to stop you. Just make your entry as early as possible in the current demanding and challenging situation. Just think about how many friends are coming from the same door out to get jobs in the companies. But as I was trying to tell you, industry is not going to that extent. It is not grown. So make your specialization, make your skill set work in favor of you, and try to make entry as early as possible, so you can define your path afterwards. So how do you see the regulatory affairs jobs in post-pandemic scenario? It is pre or post-pandemic scenario. Regulatory affairs jobs functionality is always flourishing. I never see any diminishing in this royal challenging area. This is always diminishing to the anti-core of only upgrowing. So it will never diminish. And how do you see the regulatory affairs post-pandemic? So I think I am done. Yes, those are the questions, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Srinivas, for your presentation and helping students in India to know about the regulatory affairs. And with this, I think some of them can choose this regulatory affairs as one of their career path. So with this, I thank Mr. Srinivas for your nice presentation. And I also thank the department colleagues who are with us during this presentation. And they also can help the students to choose in this way as a career. And I also thank the IT people, Mr. Jaykumar, and also our COI, Mr. Ravindra, for arranging this webinar and making it into a successful one. Thank you all.